So good evening, everybody.
Good evening, Sveti.
Thank you. Thanks for having me. So tonight we're going to talk about how we can fall asleep fast and switch off our racing mind. All right, so my name is Sveti Williams. I'm a sleepologist. So how much do we know about sleep? What is sleep? Sleep is a highly complex biological phenomenon. However, tonight we're not going to discuss sleep. What we're going to do is going to get straight into the problem, which is our racing mind. So when we talk about racing mind, what are the two problems that we do have? Is it with thinking too much and feeling stressed? Is that right?
Yeah.
That's right. So what do we all want? We want to fall asleep fast, don't we? So a lot of us have been to an expert for an advice, right? So what are those things that experts advise us about sleep? Take medication, sleeping tablets, melatonin, antidepressants, just to name a few. We've all been there. We've all been prescribed one of those or two. So what is the effect of taking sleep medication? So the effects of sleep medication is predominantly dependence on the medication. And when you take the sleep medication, you go into a cycle. They're very hard to get out of that cycle. So the cycle that we actually kind of get ourselves into is the cycle of dependence. So when we take medication, we develop tolerance to it. So we have to take more medication, higher dose, and then we get dependence to that dose as well. So we basically get into this cycle where we stop the medication, we take more medication, and we just can't get off the medication. It's very, very hard. And every client, 100% of my clients who come to me, they actually are on sleep medication. So they get people waiting to get to that extreme situations where they need to take high doses of medication to help them sleep. But in the end, it doesn't work. So when we are faced with those problems about taking the sleep medication, how does it work? Has it ever worked? Has sleep medication or other medications helped fix people's sleep? No, not that we know of. They actually make it worse because the side effect of sleep medication is pretty dramatic. So the side effects, as you may see, vary, and they are pretty scary to deal with, to live with. So why take sleep medication? But a lot of us just don't know what to do because we are so busy these days. We do a lot these days. We do a lot every day. We are exposed to a lot every day. Do you guys agree?
Yeah.
We're exposed to all this traffic. We are not designed to be exposed to all these things every day, right? So when we are highly stimulated, it is very difficult to switch our mind off. So it is very difficult to get a good night's sleep, to fall asleep first, so you can sleep. And a lot of people actually suffer from not being able to stay asleep all night. But we will cover that next time. What we will cover today is how to get to sleep initially and quickly. Okay? So has any one of you ever had all these side effects from taking sleep medication? Or any sleep effect, any of these side effects? A lot of people come to me and they have these side effects and they go to the next doctor to try to fix these side effects. However, these are just the symptoms of things that not necessarily to be taken, like sleep medication. Yeah, so if there wasn't a problem in the first place, we wouldn't end up with these side effects. They're very scary. So, did you guys know that insomnia can actually turn into a sleep disorder? Insomnia in the first place is just a symptom of something that's going on inside us, some imbalances in the body. Does that make sense to you guys? So insomnia is not a disorder of its own, it's just a symptom. But today we will only talk about the racing mind as the problem for insomnia. So before insomnia turns into sleep disorder, let's fix it without going to extreme of taking sleep medication. So when experts like doctors, medical doctors, and other experts that you guys go visit, when they suggest to you take sleep medication, what would you do? What would you do? Would you take sleep medication, or would you go and research and find something that actually helps naturally? Because naturally we are designed to sleep. Just like breathing, sleeping is a natural human requirement, and just natural thing that we do, just like breathing. But yet it's very complicated biological phenomenon, like as I mentioned earlier. So what I'm going to teach you today is how to naturally fall asleep fast without having to rely on the medication and other substances. A lot of people drink alcohol to go to sleep. But what happens when we do drink alcohol? When we go to sleep, what happens? They do go to sleep initially, however, the sleep is not a quality sleep. And this is why we wake up feeling hangover, feeling dizzy, feeling all those kind of imbalances. Who loves having hangover? Nobody. That's why I don't drink alcohol, just to avoid it. But it's not just because of that. All the effects that alcohol puts us through, it's just not worth it, is it? So what we do have to make sure is to get that good night's sleep. Not just the quantity, but the quality. One can sleep for 10 hours, but yet wake up with feeling groggy and not feeling healthy. Whoever experienced it? We all experienced it one time or another. Correct? Yes, I had that. I had a lot of clients come to me and saying, I slept for so many hours, but I don't feel well. But we'll cover that next time. So today, we're only going to work on how to switch that racing mind and go to sleep fast, so you can get enough sleep, so you don't have to lie in bed for hours trying to fall asleep. Isn't that frustrating? Is that the worst thing you can actually possibly put yourself through, lying there for hours trying to go to sleep, and you just can't go to sleep? Alright, so I'm going to introduce to you guys my own method, which is called the breathing bird. People, when I teach my seminars, and I always have a survey in the end, and people say to me, what's your favorite? People say the bird, but I've got a few of them. But tonight I will teach you the breathing bird. But next time I will teach you the sleeping bird. So, all right. This will help you guys to switch off your mind and switch off that, those thinking, the overthinking. Because then when you wake up at night, in the morning, you're thinking, what was that? I was thinking so much about nothing. Do you guys ever lie in bed thinking about things that you don't even ever need to think about? Why? But we can't understand why. We just lie there and the mind just goes. We can't stop it. The mind just thinks and thinks and ruminates and worries for nothing. So before we get to that stage, let's switch it off. That's the best thing we can do, right? Switch it off. So we can get that to that place where we just drift into that beautiful sleep. All right, these are just a few of my clients who learned this technique. This is what they said about how they felt afterwards. If you guys can you read that? So a lot of people who come see me speak or come to see me, they use my technique because this really works. And this is what they say to me. They write to me about how they feel and how it works. So we'll move on to the next one. I actually work with the elite sports performance people who use this technique to go to sleep, because those people feel like they're highly stimulated, taking a lot of supplements to perform well, but yet they can't switch the mind off, so they can't perform well the next day because they're not getting enough sleep. Because you heard about the triangle of health? What are the triads of health? One is nutrition. One is exercise. And what's the third one? Sleep and recovery, correct? If one of these triads is out of balance, what happens?
We're not healthy.
We can't be healthy. We can't feel healthy, and we can't be healthy. So, but there's so much information about the diets, so much information about nutrition, and so much about exercise, but yet there's not enough about sleep. We lack that education in schools and universities about the importance of sleep. Okay? And how to sleep well, and how much sleep do we need. So before we continue, let's calculate how much sleep do we actually need every night. I'll give you a clue, without getting too much into detail, because we'll cover that next time. So today, I'll tell you just quickly. Each night, we go through 5 cycles of sleep. Each cycle is about 90 minutes. So how much sleep do we need?
7.5
hours.
7.5 hours. If you add 90 by 5 times 5, that's 7.5 hours. So a lot of people come to me and say, what's the correct amount of sleep that we need to get? Well, it's difficult to answer, because providing your sleep cycles are right, which for adults is 90 minutes, could vary from 60 to 90. However, if you're healthy, it's 90 minutes. So 7.5 hours. However, that's not enough. What we need to consider is the sleep latency. The sleep latency is the time from the moment the lights are switched off to the time when we're falling asleep. So that could take about 20 minutes. I'm not saying that it should take you 20 minutes to toss and turn in your bed. It's just the time when your lights are switched off and you're lying but getting to the stage where you're feeling that relaxation to fall asleep. So how long does that make us having to be in bed? About close to 8 hours, right? So if we were to wake up at 7 o'clock in the morning, what time do we have to be in bed? 11 o'clock. So 10 past 11, our lights need to be switched off, and we need to lie in bed ready for sleep. Yes. So if you guys ever need to calculate that, if you lie in bed thinking, okay, I need to get up at this specific hour, use this sleep calculator to tell you exactly when you need to be in bed, providing you are able to fall asleep straight away, pretty much. Well, after tonight you will be able to. If you apply this technique properly, that will help. Okay? Alright, the sleep in bed. Let's get into it. Alright, you guys ever heard about diaphragm? What is diaphragm? Yes, the diaphragm is a muscle that separates the upper part of our body to the lower part of our body. However, the most important thing is that the diaphragm is the second most important muscle in the body after the heart. Does that tell you how important the diaphragm is? Yeah, very. Yes, absolutely. So the diaphragm is actually an organ of its own. It's made up of 2 separate kind of muscles that join. Is attached to our ribs and to the back, to our spine, and they kind of join in the middle. So when we breathe, the diaphragm, we don't really breathe through our lungs, but the lungs can't inhale the air without diaphragm having to contract. So as the diaphragm contracts, our lungs are able to get that air in, and the diaphragm needs to relax for air to come out. But think of this, the apex of the heart, that pointy bit of the heart, is attached to our diaphragm, right? So, and the diaphragm, through the diaphragm, we have our windpipe and our the food pipe, right? So everything goes through diaphragm. Imagine how important that is. But what happens is the diaphragm muscle actually gets out of balance. So three things could happen to it. The diaphragm could get really tight, too tight. And when it's tight, people get so back. They're starting to have this palpitations. They begin to have this heart kind of contractions, abnormal, and people thinking they're having a heart attack. There are cases where people come to the hospital thinking they're having a heart attack, but that just could have been their diaphragm being tight. People having symptoms of hernia, the hiatus hernia, that's because the diaphragm is so tight. It's jamming the food pipe, right? So people having so back. Why? Because the diaphragm is so tight. Those who exercise a lot, who have this elite, who in elite sport, I have a lot of those people who come to me. When I teach them this technique, they say, I no longer suffer from so back. That's because of the diaphragm. Another thing that could happen to our diaphragm is our diaphragm actually get too loose, just like any muscle. So when that happens, imagine, we can't really take that full breath. We can't even take a full breath when it's too tight either. And we can have so back too with having the diaphragm too loose, right? Just like any muscle. One more thing can happen to it, one of those three things. One side it could be too tight, another could be too loose. So how does that work? Have you ever met those people who have that little cough, like tiny little cough, but there's nothing wrong with them? That's because the diaphragm, two muscles are just not adjusted properly. One's too loose, one's too tight. Does that make sense to you guys? So imagine if you could just balance the diaphragm muscle to have that full breath, how would you feel? And if you guys go to the gym or exercise or go dancing or running, how do you feel when you just can't breathe? You got shortness of breath. That doesn't feel very good, does it? So what I'm going to teach you today is how you can adjust the diaphragm muscle. You can do all those things, and you can breathe, and you can take that full breath. Okay, so let's get into it. All right, well, this is my brother. He loves modeling for me, so he comes with me everywhere. All right, so okay, guys, I want you to sit back. Drop everything you've got in your hands. Sit back, and I want you to really sit there and feel how you're breathing. How is your breathing? I want you to put an emphasis on how much effort do you put into your breathing. Okay, so now what I want you to do is put your hands like this for me. It's nice and straight. Find your ribs. Don't talk, it's difficult when you're talking. And I want you to go dig under your ribs. Does it feel tender? It feels a little tender. So I want you to feel comfortable and comfortable. It's tender because we don't usually touch our diaphragm, do we? So what we're doing right now, we are touching our diaphragm muscle. Relax your abdomen. Just really relax it and just let it just be really, really, really soft. And get in there with your sides of your palms and just go and wrap your diaphragm all the way from here to the bottom of your ribs. Just get in there and just rub it like that. With the, yeah. Go harder. I want you to feel it. So do this for about 5 to 10 seconds. It's easier when you're lying down. So when you get back home tonight, I want you to lie down on your back and do this. Now, feel your breathing. How does that feel? Yeah? I had people at my seminar sitting there saying, I don't have sore back anymore. But what I want you to do every night, do this 3 times. Have a break in between. Because what will happen is the diaphragm will go back to its previous position because it has the memory, just like all the muscles and organs in our body, until you train it enough for it to stay adjusted. Does that make sense to you guys? So who feels that the diaphragm gone back to be tight? Or is it still easy to breathe? Still is, yes. So let's do this again. Let's do this 3 times. Relax and take that deep breath. And before you go exercising, do this. You'll be able to last longer doing that exercise, running, singing, dancing, wherever you do. This will help. Okay? So when you lie in bed, I want you to do this 3 times every night. But not just at night. Do this during the day. If you feel like you just can't take the full breath, get shortness of breath, do this. This doesn't have to be applied just to sleeping. The diaphragm adjustment is a very, very important thing that you can do. If you ever have sore back, begin with this. If you think you're having a heart attack, do this first. It might not be a heart attack. It just might be just a tightness, because a lot of other muscles are attached to the diaphragm. So if that's tight, other muscles are tight too. Other muscles follow. Okay? How do you feel? Feels good, doesn't it? Okay, so let's move on to the next. The frontal lobe. Do you guys know where our frontal lobe is? Just right here on your forehead. And there's these 2 points on our forehead. Do you guys ever notice when somebody asks you a question, you're like, oh, let me just think, and you touch this point? Have you guys ever noticed that? This is our reflex, that our natural instinct to activate this part of the brain, because this part of the brain specifically is responsible for that, motor function, for the solution solving kind of functions, for our memory, for our spontaneity, and for all other things, that initiation to find that solution for you. A lot of times during the day we get so busy that we actually the information doesn't go through our frontal lobe to give us solutions. We're constantly running on fight or flight response. We have that fight or flight dominance in our body that actually needs to be neutralized by the pleasure hormones, but this particular part of the brain that gives us that solution. It tells us it's okay, it's not that bad. But however, because we're so busy, the information goes to the back brain, to our occipital part of the brain, without having to come through this part to give us that patience, solution. Okay, does that make sense to you guys? So if you ever find yourself touching these 2 points, you know why. Because you're trying to activate the memory. You're trying to activate that part of the brain to remember things. Yes? All right. And social and sexual behavior. If you ever want to control that, do that. Okay, use those points. All right, so let's now try this. Okay, so what I want you to do is touch your forehead very gently, as if you were touching a bird. Don't push too hard, and don't do it too far. Just very gently. If you ever touched a bird, birds are very sensitive, so do this, and you can yawn, it's okay. This is one of the places that you can yawn. I get it all the time, because this is relaxing. So after you do the diaphragm, do this. Do this for about 10-20 seconds. You can switch arms too. Or again, it's easier when you're lying down. And when you can also use this when you're feeling stressed, overwhelmed, when you can't remember something, when you need to activate that solution kind of based situation where you need that answer straight away. So do this for 20 seconds. Or when you have anticipation of that interview, job interview, or that event you need to speak at, or something stressful coming up for you, use this. I find this works really well in children, on anyone. This is a very easy technique to use, especially after you've done your diaphragm. You can now breathe. You can take that deeper breath. You know how they say that deep breathing is relaxing? It's true. But however, how can we take a deep breath if our diaphragm is so tight? How can we relax if our mind is constantly in that fight or flight response? How can we? So before we try to relax, let's do this. So guys, let's recap. Diaphragm, let's do this again together. 10 seconds. Take that deep breath for me. Next time, I will teach you the mantra breathing. This technique that helps you take that deep breath and say the mantra as well. But that's next time. And now, let's do the bird. This is the bird. And it's called the breathing bird because we get to breathe and use the bird. That was the easiest name to find. People just remember that. And children love it. My children, they do a lot of sport. And when they can't sleep because they just came back from dancing, 8 o'clock, and they have to be in bed like 8:15, I said to them, do the bird, and they sleep really well. And I do too. Okay, how does that feel? Feels good, doesn't it? Feels relaxing? Very. So who's going to use this technique? I want you to use it, guys. It's so easy. It will take you under a minute to actually switch off your mind. And when you're doing this, I want you to keep breathing deeply. So deeply, you're just feeling like your whole body going limp. You just your hand drops. And because you've fallen asleep. So what do you think this will help you? Absolutely. So you can find me on Facebook, on social media. Just write Sveti Williams, and please connect with me. And it will be nice to stay in touch. You can ask me questions on social media, and let's stay connected. Do you have any more questions about your sleep? About something we spoke about tonight? Or are you too sleepy? You guys too sleepy too.
What about infants? What about babies?
Yes.
Can you touch on that?
You can apply some of my techniques on babies, yes.
20-month-old?
That's fine, yeah. They're non-invasive, as you've experienced. On children, don't do diaphragm. Oftentimes their diaphragm muscle is fine. It's us when we're stressed. You know how when we're stressed, you get really tight, all our muscles, including diaphragm. So children don't experience diaphragm tightness. No, unless they get bigger and they started to experience that kind of adult sort of stress. But no, you don't use diaphragm. But other methods that I teach, yes.
Yeah, no, I've heard of your method because I had a relative that was in hospital.
Yes.
And she wasn't sleeping, and one of the nurses there was doing exactly what you just did.
Wow.
To her.
Yes.
And it worked.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Yes, I teach this.
So I've heard of the method, and you're very good.
Yes. Yeah. In Melbourne.
Yeah.
Yes.
At Cabrini Hospital.
Okay.
Yeah. She was just a nurse, and she just started doing this technique on my relative.
Yes.
And it worked.
What's her name? Do you know her name?
Sonia. Yeah. The lady that was doing it.
Yes, yes. I had
the bird.
Yeah,
the bird.
Touching the forehead.
Yes.
She was also touching the back.
Yes, I teach that. Yes, yes.
And she was doing the diaphragm.
Yes,
and she made her move to side.
Yes.
And after that, she'd hit her head on the pillow and sleep.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And the funny thing is, it also helps you sleep long term as well.
Yeah.
And you can take this with you anywhere you go.
Yeah.
Because
I was falling asleep while you were talking.
Of course. Well, if you guys come to this,
around Melbourne today, and I'm exhausted.
That's why we keep this to the end.
Yeah.
At my workshop, I can't teach this at the beginning because people will be asleep.
Yeah.
So I teach this in the end. Yes.
And I don't have a problem personally, but I do know of someone.
Yeah, and look at that nurse. Perhaps she didn't have a sleep problem. However, she learned this. Now she can heal her patients.
Yeah.
And this is such non-invasive technique that is just applied to any age, anybody, even animals.
Yeah.
What about sleep apnea?
Yes.
Can it help?
Depending on the problem, the root cause, however, yes, it can. Because sleep apnea, people worry a lot. Sleep apnea usually turns into psychological sleep disorder anyway.
Yeah.
So I have a lot of people actually have trauma, emotional trauma, from using the sleep app machine.
Yeah.
Because they're very traumatic to you. Physically, you can get used to it, and emotional is the worst thing to deal with. So I do have clients who I have to detach them from that trauma and work on them. So yeah, absolutely. So before you go into sleep app machines, do everything you can to actually fix your sleep naturally. Yes, you may have to lose weight if the excess weight is the problem. Oftentimes, slim people can also have sleep apnea. However, deal with because oftentimes for slim people with sleep apnea, usually the tongue muscles are just very loose. So you gotta have to do that tongue yoga to get your tongue trained to be in the correct position so you can sleep. Yeah. So this works on any disorder, any kind of situation where there is that emotional component of attached to sleep associated with the sleep in itself. Yeah. Any more questions, guys? Yes?
Did you say you'll talk about getting back to sleep?
Yes, I will do. Yes. We'll talk about getting back to sleep, because a lot of people actually, some people can just have no problems to go into sleep, but they wake up in the middle of the night, just can't sleep anymore. But if you guys hit your pillow before, if you guys asleep before you hit your pillow, you're sleep deprived. Because you do need that few minutes of that kind of transition time from wakefulness to sleep to being asleep. If you fall asleep before your head touches the pillow, you are definitely sleep deprived. But those people usually do wake up through the night and they just struggle to go back to sleep. And again, this will help. If they wake up during the night, people also suffer emotionally because I can't go back to sleep, or maybe I should get up, or what's going on with me, or all these thoughts, or all these worries. I'm going to get up at this time. I'm going to be so fresh in the morning. That presentation, kids, husbands, neighbors, the dog, everything just comes, all this ruminating. So using this technique in the middle of the night also helps. But what I do teach is how to not wake up at night. You guys, you see, I've got another problem now because that I fixed my sleep. I can't wake up in the morning to my alarm clock. Do you know how many times I couldn't wake up? Like with Sarah, we were at this retreat on the weekend, and I had to get her to ring my room in the morning because and she rings me 7:04.
She was sound asleep.
Yeah, I just cannot wake up too long. This is how you sleep. I'll tell you a story, it's a funny story. Last year, at the end of the year, I had to fly here to teach my workshop. So I booked my flight to leave at 6 o'clock in the morning. No, 6:55 was my flight to come here. I put my alarm for, let's say, 4:30. I can't remember. Because I like to go to a lounge, have my breakfast, relax. Anyway, I put my alarm, I wake up at 5:55. 1 hour before my flight, I'm still in bed. My children's still sleeping. I got up and was like, oh my God. My kid's like, Mommy, don't worry, get up, kids. Lucky, I had everything packed, my suitcase there, my clothes are there, kids, everything was organized, ready to go. I put the kids in the car. My partner hops in the car and drives. We get to the airport 24 past 6. Can you imagine? I've got half an hour to get on the plane before it leaves. And lucky I was flying Virgin. I get to the counter and she says, oh, that's okay, no problem. You've got 1 minute to spare. She takes my luggage and tells me, have a safe flight. Can you believe it? While driving to the airport, I was on the phone to Virgin saying, can you get me another flight straight after this? And usually a flight like every hour. She's like, no, man, you can if you pay for $500. I was like, I already paid $500 for this flight. And she said, yeah, well, you can wait till 5 p.m. I was like, no, I can't wait till 5 p.m. I'm flying now. And I'm lucky I live close to the airport. 24 past 6, I'm still in the car. But it just tells you how you sleep. So I can never trust myself to fly in the morning. I cannot. I had to get somebody because I was at home alone. The other morning I had to fly here. I had to get somebody, leave the key outside, had to get somebody to come to my house, open the key, get me out of bed.
Wow.
This is just the struggle I'm facing these days.
It is. You put yourself to sleep.
I'm sleeping.
I'm a bit like that though.
Yeah. But isn't that a blessing in disguise? It's a blessing to sleep that way. However, if you have commitments, you're going to have some arrangements to make.
What do you say to people that can drink short black, espresso coffee and sleep?
That's fine. If it works, it works.
Yeah.
Yes, yes.
I get picked on all the time. 'Cause
Yes.
I have Italian coffee and I just sleep. It
Well,
doesn't affect me.
Well, why do you think in homeopathy they give you, for those insomniacs, they give you coffee?
Yeah.
They give you caffeine for insomnia because the body has that kind of that is like an opposite effect.
Yeah.
So when you do have that hype, you put it so low, you go to sleep. Yeah, but we will cover the effects of caffeine on your body next time.
What about the TV screens, like iPads and that?
Yes.
Big.
Yes, so iPads, phones and laptops, they have that night shift, use it. I use it 24/7, indefinitely.
Yeah.
However, the TV, when it comes to TV, what I teach in my workshops is basically, when I help people sleep, I try to do it without having to have any negative emotions. For example, I wouldn't tell you stop drinking coffee because that could create that negative association with having to stop drinking something that you love. So I don't do that. I rather, when you do have that TV, create that distance. Distance plays a good role. So the further you can be away from TV, do that. If that TV is your relaxation time, I can't take it away from you without you being ready to give it up. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So anything you do,
It's like with everything, it's your mindset.
it's your thing.
Mindset
Yes,
is so
yes.
important.
So it's just if that particular thing puts you into that relaxation, why take it away and create the stress of separation?
Yeah, that's right.
Yes. So create those things that could work in your favor, not against you.
Yeah.
Yes.